And I want us to take advantage of that curiosity. So here's some ideas for success as we think about this. The buzzwords that we use in computer science are open, scalable, and flexible architectures. And a lot of the NASA work was done before that became that's the most politically correct way I can say this, before those became the principles of design. These hardwired designs that are not extensible ultimately do not serve the mission very well. In my case, to show you how foolish I was when I was a graduate student at Berkeley, I built a network, one of the first networks built of its type for my master's thesis. And by the way, I got my master's thesis, and I designed a protocol where there could only be 26 machines, because there were only 4 at the time, and I couldn't imagine that the university would ever have more than 26. So the machines were called A, B, C, D, et cetera. They still gave me my degree, and then shortly later they tore out my network and put in a proper network. So everybody can make this mistake. The internet started off with 4 nodes, now has somewhere between 250,000 and 1 million broad networks by any definition. It's just phenomenal. The number of servers, they're roughly, January 1983, we have an accurate number because of DARPA, 400 servers. In July 2007, our best estimate is 489 million servers. And this is growing and continuing to grow. It's growing faster than you think because it's growing all the time. So when you build an innovation model, you want to build it in a way that is collaborative. And this is often at odds with how people think about government programs, procurements, the traditional structures of business and private groups and so forth and so on. You want to figure out a way to do it in a much more open way. And everybody loves what NASA's doing. It should be possible to pull this off big time. The web, for example, today is built out of products known as Linux, Apache, MySQL. These are open software technologies. The creators of MySQL, by the way, just so in case there's any concern that these might be hobby businesses, were just purchased for about $1 billion by Sun Microsystems. These are real businesses with different characteristics, but it shows you that you can really deliver tremendous value. So if you solve a big problem, solve it by opening it up to the public. Assume that you don't have all the answers, because I can assure you that we don't, and I suspect nobody does. Everything's too connected. You're not getting the benefit of everyone unless you figure out a way to do it in an open way. There's a couple of really good ones. NASA did something called the Centennial Challenge Program, and I think one of the people here was one of the authors of this program, so thank you for that. A particular engineer from Maine won $200,000 in May 2007 for designing a new astronaut glove. The inner bladder of the glove used one of his kitchen cleaning gloves because it was the right solution. It just worked. And there's example after example after that when you bring in the creativity of people who maybe he didn't have a lot else going on in his life. Maybe he needed something to work on. You just made his day and you just saved yourself $1 million. But more importantly, you serve the mission really, really well. The Lunar X Prize that Google has announced, we announced a few months ago a prize which is graduated, but think of it as between $20 and $30 million. Basically, get something launched, get it to the moon, make sure when it lands it can still drive around. Okay, very straightforward. That's the non-technical explanation. Look at our website. You can see all the details if you want to bid. Why would we do this? Because it's fun, right? It's just so much fun. Now, the people who are going to attempt the Lunar X Prize, and we think there's a whole bunch of folks, are probably going to spend more than the value of the prize. But what's nice about the prize is it brings everybody together, it gets everybody's competitive juicings, and you get the multiplicative effect, not just of the money that we're putting in, the money that NASA's putting in, but the money that all the other people, all the universities and other programs that really want to be part of this historic opportunity to change science in a good way. Another aspect of the problem that I think we all face has to do with this notion of how do you learn. And in these interconnected worlds, you have to learn more quickly. Part of the success of the internet, and it's true of all of the companies, Google is simply one of the examples, is that we're built on a ship and iterate philosophy. What happens is basically we try something, and we're proud of this, by the way. We celebrate the fact that we tried this, we canceled this didn't work, we shifted, and so forth. They wiggle, right, in an interesting way. And not only does the technology allow that, but it's part of our culture. We have programs where we encourage our engineers to spend 20% of their time on things of their own interest, not what their manager is telling them that they have to do. Again, unheard of in traditional engineering, but drives much of the creative process inside our company. There are many, many such examples. So, I don't know. Who here was a big Apple Lisa user? It was the predecessor to the Mac, right? But they learned a lot from the Apple Lisa that made the Mac a great success way back when. It happens in telecommunications. The AT&T long-distance network crashed for 9 hours due to a bug consisting of a single line of C code in 1990. We all have all forgotten that, but the fact of the matter is they do it too. So the obvious message for me is to say, well, NASA, you should just ship and iterate. Well, there's this minor problem that you can't apply exactly the same approach we do because Mars and the Earth are only this close on this day, or Saturn is only in this position in this particular place, or you have a particular launch window due to orbital mechanics that you really do have to launch within this window. And there are some humorous now, but embarrassing at the time, examples. Gemini 5 splashed down off course 100 miles because of a programming error involving the way they did the calculation with a decimal point. An even more famous example, and unfortunately a negative one, in 1962, Mariner 1 went off course, and NASA at the time had to blow it up because of an error in Fortran. Right? And a hyphen had been dropped from the guidance program loaded aboard the computer. We quote it as the single most expensive hyphen in history. So I don't think it's fair for me to say, well, hey, you guys should just adopt this ship and iterate phenomena. I think what you have to do is you have to recognize that the ship and iterate model is the best model for learning and then adapt it to the constraints that are very much in your present. So one way to think about it, and as a manager, I talk to people a lot about this, is that one of the best ways to be lucky is to create more luck. And the way you create more luck is you have more at-bats. You get more shots, more launches, more learning, so forth and so on. So the more you put everything around one single event, the less likely it's going to be a perfect success. The more you figure out a way to iterate. And there are many, many ways in which you can iterate. You can iterate with openness. You can iterate with extensibility. Remember the story that I used about the Internet, that the underlying protocols were designed around a simple model of end-to-end connectivity. No one anticipated all the stuff that would be built on top of it. So given that you have these real constraints about launches and windows and so forth, make the platform such that it's the simplest possible platform that people can then build on top of. Build open systems, not closed systems. Don't try to solve the whole problem right now. The problem, as correctly defined in my view, is to build the platform, the thing that is extensible to the next example. Another example, we were looking at this. Most spacecraft can't talk to each other in any significant way. Now you say, well, I'm not sure I want spacecraft talking to each other. Well, actually, it's kind of useful for spacecraft to talk to each other, especially when they can relay information and telemetry and other information. And furthermore, we as a country can use that for many, many different reasons. Well, isn't it obvious that the spacecraft should have an internet on them too? I mean, it doesn't have to be an open internet. You could have your own private copy with a gateway, so people aren't randomly steering the spacecraft wherever they want to go. But the fact of the matter is, it does make sense. And in fact, there are people now working, and this is a great story, people working to build an interplanetary internet. That all the same principles that I'm talking about apply not just on Earth, but to the objects that we're busy launching. And by the way, not just the US, but everybody, but also the moon and Mars and so forth and so on. And this internet is interesting because there's this minor problem that as you spin, right, you lose connectivity, you have to wait for the packet. So the whole notion of latency is very different. It's like a long time before that packet shows up. But then it comes very quickly, and then there's a long time again. We haven't quite figured out a way to solve planetary rotation yet. So the fact of the